compliance with New Jersey's Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231 of Public Law 1975, I hereby declare that adequate notice of this meeting, this special mayor and council meeting, has been provided specifying that this meeting would be held on July 23rd, 2014 in Edgewater Municipal Building, 55 River Road, Edgewater, New Jersey, at 7 p.m. This notice was sent to the Record and Jersey Journal, posted on the bulletin board in the lobby of the Borough Hall, and posted on the borough's website. Councilman Monty, will you lead us in the salute to the flag?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This evening we have a conference. We invited Tom Brambrick and Dan Latansky of First Environment to give the borough an update on the remediation of Veterans Field. Tom and Dan, please come up. As soon as you guys are ready, you can let us know when you guys.
Yeah, now First Environment continuing to assess the current situation in Veterans Field. And to that end, we collected 1,067 samples at various depths, primarily two depths across the site. And that data is illustrated on Figure 1 that's on the board. The sample locations that are illustrated in red exceed the TSCA, which is the federal standard for hazardous PCB-containing materials. The samples that are designated as blue, they range in concentration from the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection standard of 0.2 parts per million to 50 parts per million. So the blue represents everything from 0.2 to 50. The red is everything that's above 50. The samples that are designated with green represent everything that is essentially clean or below the New Jersey residential standards. Now, when you look at the figure, it becomes clear that most of the highly impacted material is located in the southern portion of the park. It is also in the near surface material, and that being less than 2.5 feet. So it represents pretty much a superficial placement of fill. When you look at the deeper samples, and that's on the subsequent page, the predominant or preponderance of samples are either coded as blue, but even more to the point, more significantly, they're much more green, showing that it's essentially clean at depth, and that's 2.5 to 4 feet. And the recommendation from First Environment is to remediate or excavate those impacted soils so that the park can be reestablished as protected use. I do have there are two additional figures that are based on the data we collected. This represents the near surface samples. And what we did was attempt to calculate out the volume of soil that needs to be remediated. And because the samples were collected on a grid pattern, we essentially set up polygons or rectangles across the field and shaded them whether they were correspondingly blue or red for hazardous disposal. So what you're seeing here is a depiction of those areas of the park that require hazardous disposal versus those that do not require hazardous disposal. And when you look at the depth sample, there's only one spot, in the deeper portion of the fill, back between 2.5 and 4 feet, that requires remediation. The quantities of material, the rough quantities that we have estimated thus far is 11,000 tons of material that is hazardous, 11,700. and approximately 35,000 tons, that is not happening. That is between 0.2 and 50 parts per million.
Tom, I'm sorry, the 11,000 is the red, is the 50?
Is right, the Tosca hazardous material.
That's 50 parts, and that's the, that's stuff that's to be taken out to a facility.
Well, all the material has to be taken out
What
of
I
the
mean-
facility, but the red has to go to its designated.
Is there 3 buckets at this point, like red and then, so you said 11,000 and 35, so is it red and then, I mean, 11,000 is red and 35 is what?
Well, the 35,000 tons is coated in blue, and that still needs to be removed. It's the green that stays.
So the red and the blue are going out.
Yes, exactly right.
So that would be roughly 47,000, 47,000 tons.
Yes.
But 2 entirely different.
But
Yeah.
I do want to caution that that may be erred on the higher side because we had to extrapolate on our boundary of our grid where we had samples that exceeded the 0.2 parts per million criteria. We had to extrapolate out to a point that is not defined by sampling. That is why you have to pull to conduct additional sampling. And use that volume as part of the calculation. So I think what you're seeing is a worst case scenario for what's in place. This does not take into account sort of the piles of material that are out there, which are difficult to quantify from a volumetric standpoint, and we are still waiting on some of that data to come back.
You're talking like piles of stone on
It's
this?
a varied mix of material, ranges from asphalt to crushed rock to concrete. Building rubble.
Tom, the resolutions that we're looking at tonight focuses around the red areas to try to quantify exactly, so that in theory that number goes down, possibly goes up, probably goes down.
Well, in my estimation, it will not go up. You know, it can only come down.
Right.
Because we've extended the red portion to the nearest corresponding blue point. You know, it can't go past that.
Right.
If anything, it's going to come in a little bit back towards the massive red.
At the end, maybe it'll be helpful that to explain that when the contractor began the work, the specification called for a liner to be installed on top of the existing grade. Okay, and the samples which you took and which you are speaking of this evening are all the samples that are above the liner, correct?
That's correct.
So that is all material that was trucked to the site.
That is our understanding.
When do you expect the results from the remaining testing?
They should be in by the end of this week. We're going to get another substantive batch from the laboratory tomorrow, and the stragglers that require additional cleanup, because we're identifying PCBs at a certain level, they need to dilute the sample down to be able to quantify exactly how much is there.
Tom, have you shared these results with the DEP yet?
No, we have not.
Is there a function to do that? Is there a mechanism to do that?
There's no requirement to do that at this point in time. Once a remedial action work plan is developed, this data will be submitted to the Department of Environmental Protection as well as the Environmental Protection Agency.
And in terms of the bid to remove it, simultaneous to the approval of the DEP, we also have to have the DEP approval first before we do.
Well, DEP is they have taken a position, and it's actually been documented in some emails, that they will not object to the work commencing upon submission of the remedial action work plan. The EPA, on the other hand, requires a 30-day approval window of what's known as the self-implementing plan. So that self-implementing plan needs to be submitted to the federal EPA, and they have a 30-day comment period.
And that's a negative form, like in other words, 30 days go by from here from you continue.
Exactly, that's exactly right.
Now, the first part you said, is that specific to your company, or because we didn't get that with the terms? Like, in other words, we were told there was no decision, there was no information coming, and all of a sudden, we were told that in fact their submission was not valid in terms of DEP. Maybe I'm using the wrong language, but that's one of the reasons why we moved on on. So my question is, you had just said that the DEP would allow you to move forward based on your recommendation to them on this plan?
Yeah, with the advent of the LSRP program, the whole intent of the Segregation Reform Act and the implementation of licensing of individuals was that you can make those decisions on your own if you will. But the department, by statute, it's in the statute, they do require a 60-day window, but they're waiving that. And I do want to be clear about that. If you were to read the statute as written, they require a 60-day grace period to review things. They are not, in fact, taking that position. And I've been to seminars where higher ups in the department have said, we urge you to implement remedial action upon submission of the plan.
Okay. And guys, I'm really not trying to backtrack, really not, because I want to make sure that we understand that what you're doing is actually going to move us forward. So what I'm trying to find out is, like, in fact, we know now that the process that we had to determine, again, I'm not going to determine, I'm just making sure the first environment moves us forward. We know now that that wasn't going to get us there, right? The DEP said it wasn't going to happen, and I'm paraphrasing here. You're confident because I'm looking at something that wasn't done in the beginning, for GPS testing, a full grid pattern from every single location in the ball field. You're comfortable that this actually will pass muster. Is that the difference?
Well, I mean, I don't know specifically what the department had to say about prior before submissions. I am very confident that both the EPA and the NJDEP will approve these work plans.
Okay, well, you're not going to, but I will. And we were told that basically we were not giving a green light to move forward with that. And we didn't know about it for a long time. And this is important because we really didn't move forward. So, Greg, maybe you can help us with Phil with regard to, and I know a lot of this goes into closed session, but then everybody leaves and then we go on additional samplings and what is the end result of what we're doing tonight. We are making progress because we now basically have almost a 9% picture of what's going on. You don't give the actual percentage, but like a fairly good picture where we're at. We're fine tuning, we have the bid specs that were almost completed. Phil, if you would just jump in.
Yes,
Maybe.
the bid specifications that we will utilize in order to commence the remediation of Veterans Field will be based upon the data that you have supplied to us tonight. We are going to set up the bid so that there are, we're going to do 3 components. We're going to do fill or removal and disposal of material that is 50 parts per million and above, and which is the red area, and then also a separate quantitative unit price bid for material that is less than that. We know that depending on the level will depend on the cost to remove it. We anticipate that the quantities are estimates. Even though they're accurate estimates, they're still only estimates, and all pricing shall be per unit, not an aggregate total for the estimated total quantities. The amount of material the contractor is directed to dispose of or supply by the borough may be for quantities that are less than or in excess of these estimates that we are discussing tonight. The total contract amount shall be based upon the unit price listed multiplied by the quantity of the material disposed of or supplied by the contractor. No minimum order is guaranteed for this project. So that is what we anticipate. It is similar to our solid waste contract we have with waste management. We pay that on a per unit basis because we don't always know how much solid waste will be collected in a particular month or a particular year. We have approximately $5.5 million, and we are prepared to utilize that money to immediately commence the removal of this contaminated film. As soon as the bids go out, the bids are received, and the decision is made to award it to the lowest responsible bidder.
Mr. Mayor, with that said, with your permission, I mean, perhaps our outside counsel or special counsel, Mr. Corsi, can also join in here. Because again, we're here to basically pass resolutions to move forward, right? So when the public's here, it's a hot issue, everybody needs to know what's going on. There's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of accusations and whatnot. And I think it's important to know that really what we're doing here, and correct me if I'm wrong, whether it's Mr. Mayor or Greg or Phil, there really is 2 tracks here. we're moving forward within the monies we have left to remediate, to move on, to get to the next step. The other track, special counsel with regard to litigation, which includes mediation tomorrow, includes whether or not Liberty Mutual comes through with the money, includes whether or not Waterside comes through with the money, whether there's any action against terms, or significant actions against them that we're not backing down from. It's a separate track. And I just want to confirm before we go into closed session, everybody leaves, and it doesn't go on the record, that there are two significant tracks that we're doing. One's litigation, one's mediation, and I just want that verified.
Yes, just to bring everybody up to date, we are moving on 2 tracks, and the remediation track has been our priority because we want to get the field clean. One is not impacting the other whatsoever. We have moved as quickly as possible on the mediation track, beginning with the retention of first environment, and now delineating the contamination and moving forward with selecting a remedy. In the interim, we have been attempting to, we've met with Waterside and Judge Becker on several occasions to see if we can resolve the matter. We had a contractual obligation to do so. So we could not have filed suit under certain interpretations of the contract. So we're following our contractual obligations. If we do not resolve the matter via mediation, or determine that the mediation is no longer producing progress, we will then be able to file suit against Waterside, terms, and other parties. Also, on another track, which you mentioned, we have been pursuing the bond. And we have had numerous correspondences and discussions with the bond people. They have, like many bond people, to some extent stalled. We had put their feet to the fire and said, what else do you need? We want a decision. I had a correspondence exchange yesterday saying, we want a decision. We did agree at their request because they wanted time to digest some of the material that was being generated. Agreed to give them until the day after the mediation, because they also wanted to participate in the mediation to see if they could bring a resolution to this, since both parties are affected by the bond, obviously. They are not attending the mediation because yesterday I received a telephone call from Waterside's counsel advising that they would not proceed the mediation if the bonding company was there. It's not really explained why, but in any event, we elected to, we're proceeding with the mediation contractually, and we'll be dealing with the bond company separately. The bond company did send a letter today, which I've not forwarded yet because I just got it before I left, basically to Waterside saying, we want you to know, we can't demand to be there. We understand you don't want us there, so we're not attending, but we will be making the decision on the day after the mediation in terms of bond. In terms of the bond.
And Tim, if you don't mind, I mean, and maybe this is not planned, this is going on. And is there any kind of doctrine of law that are they at odds? I mean, that's supposed to be their insurance company.
They are at odds in this respect. First of all, the bonding company has a fiduciary duty to the borough to make a good faith investigation and make a decision on as to whether there was a default. I've obviously taken a very strong position. It's clearly a default. What else do you need? They admit they put the material there. If they think other people are responsible, that's fine. That does not excuse that default. They have acknowledged that, and they said we just want to continue our investigation. They had an issue about the liner, whether the sample was below the liner. We assured them it was not, and that the material below the liner or the PCB material had to be removed. They're obviously getting, Waterside is very aggressively putting pressure on the bond company not to find them in default. Because essentially the bond company is holding their money with Waterside's. So whether it's, I don't know if it's a letter of credit or what it is, but it's basically Waterside's money. So Waterside said, it's our money, so we don't want you at the mediation, and we're going to pursue and try to resolve the case.
Tim, is there any benefit to, I mean, I know it's tomorrow and maybe early morning saying thank you, don't come, we'd rather have the usual come, you know, and use the time with the judge to get their answer? I mean, is there, a good point, is there a way we can kind of make sure we track what they intend to do, the mutual?
This is how I handled the issue, because I thought of that issue. I said to Liberty, we will sit down with you separately, with Judge Mecker, or in any manner, answer any questions you have. Mr. Bamberg and I had a conference call with them and their environmental consultant. I don't think they're looking for that. I think what they were seeking to do was to, I'm going to be careful, it's on the public record. I think they felt they could help the process by putting pressure on Waterside by saying that, look, if you don't come to agreement, you're going to force us to make a decision you may not. That, but I don't, they haven't told me that. So, I think we need to go ahead with Waterside. I don't know, I think tomorrow, you know, we've been through it twice. We've all discussed a lot of issues. And I think that'll be it. At least then we can say we satisfied our contractual obligations. And, you know, maybe something good will come out of it. Judge Becker is very effective. There's been, you know, Waterside was issued a notice of violation by the DEP. The EPA likely will be doing the same. And that, actually, that notice of violation required them to remove the contaminants from the property. They responded to it. I asked the DEP for it, they wouldn't give it to me. We had an Oprah request, we filed an Oprah request, and we should have it shortly. But, so hopefully tomorrow, given all these, the fact that we now have a much better handle on the cost, this data has been shared with Waterside and Liberty.
In total?
Yes. I didn't have the latest version of it, but we sent it to them Monday, so they would have it in time before the mediation to be prepared. This, you know, may have a positive impact because I think the cost will be significantly less than what we initially.
Well, let me ask you about that, if you don't mind, not to cut you off. The 11,000, so the 11,000 and 35, can you talk to us in terms of what terms was saying at 11,000 versus 20? I mean, kind of, we don't have a number attached to it yet, but is that coming, and is it a lot less? That's why.
I haven't studied, but basically it's a lot less because one of the reasons we did this extensive testing was to further delineate the levels of contamination above 50 parts per million,
Right.
which are TSCA regulated, and as you know, the cost to dispose of it is 10 times higher, Tom, or no, 5 times higher. So all this work we did has been very beneficial from that perspective.
Right. And we feel that, I mean, as far as the bid, I know we'll be quiet, is there a eventual number that you put on it or does our engineer do it? Who does that? Who puts the actual number, like terms did say, well, maybe they give us a total amount. Who puts that sort of like price tag on it for the disposing cost per bucket, so to speak? Who does that? Phil?
Well, that is part of the bid.
Okay.
If,
Yeah.
you know, they're gonna have to determine their own trucking
Got
rates.
it. All right. Thank
The
you.
question, I think, that might be a good follow-up, maybe Councilman Doran has pointed out. We have been advised tonight there are approximately 47,700 tons to be removed. Can you convert that into cubic yards?
Yeah, that'd be good.
We do have that number. We have cubic yards, that's how we came up with the
Oh, okay.
tonnage. The only reason we're putting it in tons is because that's how usually.
You bid it out.
They bid it out.
Right,
You know,
I understand.
that's how
Okay,
they
but
dispose
the
of
terms
it.
was.
They got it, they got
Okay,
it.
thank you.
In the other, you have a measured source plan.
Right, the approximate cubic yards for hazardous is 7,700.
7,000.
7,700.
Oh, wow.
In total.
Wow.
I believe
Total, that's 10,000 again.
Yeah.
I'm not speaking.
That has to go.
And that's
So
that's red.
terms is
Correct.
estimates versus the estimates here are drastically different.
And I think it's it's very interesting.
That's
It's
the
a
question.
third, it's a third.
In their SIP, their self-funding plan, terms had suggested 14,000 cubic yards of hazardous and 14,000 cubic yards of non-hazardous.
Still a significant difference here.
And I think the public should know that's important as we move forward with the second track, is it not, Tim, in terms of, will he really step up and actually pay for it? It's a mistake, like he said he was from the beginning. So maybe now it's more reasonable he can pay for it. I mean, I'm talking off the cuff here, but perhaps that's the direction on the second track we're going for.
It hopefully will be a factor, we'll find out.
Good luck. Thanks.
Now, Tim, let me just ask a question. In previous, you've experienced mediation before. Who makes the calls? Who's calling the shots as far as the insurance company coming in tomorrow? Who makes that decision?
Well, this is how it worked. This is, Judge Mecca indicated that obviously if Waterside did not want him there, he could not compel Waterside to permit him, because remember, Liberty is not a party to the contract under which we're at mediation, so it had to be voluntary. Our position was we wanted them there, but obviously we consented, but if Waterside didn't consent, we really, there's nothing we could do, except that obviously let them know that we weren't happy about it, and then proceed as we are proceeding.
Do we have any further questions?
Can you explain to us a little more about your proposal to further delineate?
Sure. One of the primary objectives was to try to accurately characterize the volume of soil that needs to go, either from a hazardous or non-hazardous perspective. The grid pattern that was established over the property was set at 30-foot centers. So every 30 feet, we had, in essence, a boring one. Now, where we have a hit that's marked in blue, and adjacent is a hit that's marked in red, we have to assume that everything from that red dot to the next corresponding blue dot is hazardous. We can't go the other way, only for conservancy. So in order to further refine and hopefully reduce these numbers, we need to install borings at the midpoint of each of those locations so we can, move. Because every 15 feet along a transect that's 150 feet long represents a substantial volume of soil.
Maybe it's not, shouldn't be read all the way through. Maybe-
Why?
You're gonna find that out.
My belief is it's not going to be read.
It's not going to be.
It may be in some instances, but it would be highly unlikely for every instance to go all the way to that.
So that could essentially reduce the number of PCBs over 50 parts per million, which could significantly reduce the cost of disposal, correct? That's the objective?
That's it.
And so we're spending, what was the additional cost, 3,000 in that area? That may save us,
Well, if it plays out, it will
Yeah,
save you substantially. This exercise alone will save you probably over $2 million. The initial exercise.
So this exercise saved us, this alone saved us $2 million from the original proposal to clean up.
If you take the volumetric change between the 14,000 cubic yards to the 7,000 cubic yards, it equates to roughly
$2.7 million.
I would just like to say, because I'm definitely done. Thank you. This grid pattern is every single part of the ball field. I had reservations about what you were doing. From afar, Councilman Vidal was on the field, had reservations on the field. But I think the most important thing is, in all sincerity and all seriousness, is that this is comprehensive, it's GPS, it's good, and it's the way it should have been done all along. And it'll give us a comfort level, whatever it costs, however prevails, it doesn't prevail, whoever we get money for it doesn't. And I think we will, and I think we all know that. And I think it's an extra season, and it's not a good thing, but it's going to be done right, and I'm done.
It's not
Thank you.
I haven't tested the Little League.
Any other comments?
I just want to say that have this approach taken from the get-go, that perhaps at this point right now, we may have already had trucks on the field, and we could have been moving along with the remediation. And unfortunately, it was poorly managed, and fortunately, we are where we are now, and we've got some information, and we can go ahead and make some decisions.
And it never should happen to begin with.
And it never should happen.
Any other comments? This time I open the meeting to the public. Okay, actually, I asked that you explain the two resolutions that we have here tonight. Your two proposals.
The first one is for the balance of the sampling that was conducted to generate this number of samples. I think initially we had proposed, to get this project underway, the number of samples was substantively less than what ended up being needed to accurately characterize the property. The second resolution or proposal is to refine these volumes to 6,000 cubic yard